Roderick, this is probably your fifth time on this podcast, which is
Yeah, I think
insane.
so.
Thanks so much for being here, man.
Thank you for having me, dude. It's always
Yeah.
awesome to come on there and talk to you.
All these episodes, I always look at them as like a marker in time. It's like, oh yeah, that episode when I talked to Roderick, that was what was happening in my life. And then it's like another one. It's like, oh yeah, I remember the events going on in my life then too. It's like it's interesting. And we always look different in
Yeah,
every episode too. It's so funny.
we're changing.
We really
We're
are.
yeah.
Dude, you shared a story with me, which was pretty wild. I'll let you get on with it.
The story about Plato you're referring to, is that the one you're talking about?
That's the one.
I yes, yes, this is an awesome story. So so Plato, after spending some time with Socrates, oh well, let me start over. Okay. Before Socrates was a philosopher, he was a poet. And he wrote dramas, right? Those like really famous Greek tragedies, he wrote things like that. And they were poetry. And after spending time with Socrates and kind of hearing more about the Heraclitean um way of thinking and understanding the cosmos, he gave up his poetry and burned them in an offering to Prometheus to give him like true knowledge and wisdom.
Which I think is so wild. And it's cool. It's very symbolic. Like burning
Yeah,
your
I think it's
poems. That's a hard thing to do in some sense. It's like, wow.
yeah, definitely. If you wow, this is funny. I actually did take a book of my poems, and this was when I was in 11th grade, and I burned them like that. That literally happened. Like one of
Wow.
the journals that I had
Was
filled with
that
poetry. I forgot. I
was it by
forgot
any
that that had
chance
happened.
like inspired by that story or it just inadvertently happened?
No, they just inadvertently happened. Like it was kind of in a fit of emotion, like it was a very passionate
Interesting.
time for me. And I was like, I'd written all this stuff into this journal and it was pretty full. And I was like, well, now I have to get rid of everything. Yeah, it was a pretty interesting thing. Yeah, and I had not heard of this story. This was something that I had heard recently and it very much like stuck with me. But I didn't remember that until right now when we were talking about it.
I know Prometheus is a big figure for you, and Achilles is a
Yeah.
big figure for me. I've noticed for myself that as time goes on, I might not always think about Achilles, but that influence always has its hand in something that I do. What would you say your relationship is like with the figure of Prometheus in your life?
It's definitely a guiding figure, and I will I don't miss a chance to bring up Prometheus. Like if I'm talking to someone about um butterflies or fires, or like the fire is a very big one, the symbol of fire, and talking about cosmic order. It's
Yeah.
very, very connected. Yeah, Prometheus is always not has always been, but I guess like the sort of different faces of Prometheus that I see um now, so have always been in my life, like the trickster, you know. Um the
Oh
trickster is
yeah.
always, yeah, he's Prometheus is connected to the trickster, he tricks Zeus.
It's crazy how
Uh,
much sense that makes because Loki is like connected with
yeah,
fire and he's the
same.
trickster. Wow. Never
Yeah,
thought about that.
yeah. I think Loki is definitely one of these faces of Prometheus that I would be referring to. Um, yeah, they've always kind of like popped up in my life.
There's another thing that I wanted to talk to you about, and I was watching that movie Ted. You
Oh,
familiar?
okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. The
In
Seth
the
MacFarlane teddy bear.
Yes, he's a great writer,
Yeah,
man, honestly. And
he's hilarious, dude.
he was saying like no matter how big a splash you make in the world, eventually nobody cares. And when I heard that, I
Yeah.
was like, I needed to hear it, and from him especially, you know? What do you
Yeah.
make of that, man?
I think of water when you said that. Like when you take a drop and you drop it into water, like the ripples will be there, but eventually the water will still, you
Yeah,
know, it's like
yeah,
a part of the process.
it certainly is. Yeah. And it's a humbling thing, and it provides
Yeah.
relief, you know?
Yeah, it definitely would take a stress off your shoulders if you were like, what are the ripples that I am making, forever? You never just let the water be still.
Yeah. Well, let's hear something on your mind, man. Like, what have you been thinking about? What do you think is something you wanted to discuss?
Um, oh, this is like an interesting direction. I think it's one of the more interesting directions that I've been going in, and it's the connection between this is kind of like the connection between like physics and the esoteric that I was telling you about before, still like still an important part of it. The electromagnetic permeativity, this is talking like this is like just yeah, the idea that the electric side of things is connected to the masculine and the magnetic is connected to the feminine.
Oh, and what do
And those two
you?
things coming together produce a child, which would be gravity.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
What is the
yeah.
symbolism behind the electric and the magnetic?
The electric is because it's penetrated, right? And the magnetic is because it receives. It's
Hmm.
like an X and Y type of thing going on.
Wow, that's really cool symbolism there.
Yeah, those are two. Yeah, and even with the X and the Y, you have this if I rotate it like this, you have this connection of these two vectors, that come in
Across.
one that way, one that way. Yeah, and you create a cross, you create this X, you create if you're familiar with the Egyptians, the pine cones kissing.
I think so.
There's yeah, there's these pine cones that um they're holding, and like in some of them it's two pine cones and they're connecting them together. It's actually this way.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah, that's been like one of the bigger things that I've been thinking about. Kind of recently. This hasn't been like the main focus, but it definitely is a piece of the puzzle that I was like, oh, once I like learned this, I was like, wow.
Yeah, that it it very much sounds like something that you're interested in.
Yeah, I think it connects to like the esoteric alchemy, when they're talking about I think when you look at alchemy, sometimes there are things that point to very specific things, and then there are other things that are very broad, right? So if you look at like stuff like hermetic principles, like these things are very broad, like the law of gender, the law of correspondence, you're as above, so below. These are very like broad laws that apply to everything.
That one goes hard, man. As above, so below. Goes hard.
Yeah, man, it really does. That's been another piece of this puzzle that I've been figuring out is like the fractality of all, like considering the considering cosmology to be fractal in nature, like intrinsically. Yeah, this has been a big part of this.
Yeah, it's so cool, man, to see that you're into this because, as I mentioned in the beginning, like this is your fifth time on the podcast. It's like
Hmm.
every time we're talking, it just seems like oh, there's something new going on in Rodric's life. It's really
Yeah,
cool. Yeah,
for you as well too.
Yeah. Well, what do you glean, if you can, new coming out of my interests?
Out of your interest, so to tell you the truth, I don't know where your interests are going, but I do think that you are stepping into newness, right? Like we were talking earlier about the end, the cusp of an end, and I definitely feel that projecting off of you.
Mm. Wow, yeah. There's a song by One Direction called Night Changes. Have you heard it?
No, I haven't heard.
There's a great lyric in it where it's like, but there's nothing to be afraid of, even when the night changes. And it
Yeah,
kind of is discussing how, like, you can go to sleep with some dreams and then wake up and then those dreams are gone, but it's okay. You don't have to be afraid.
yeah.
I know that's very broad, but do you have any thoughts on that?
No, dude, I love that. I love that. Like when you wake up, you don't have to worry. Like that's like a really I think that that's like a very, dude, I love this about you. Like, I feel like you can find things in places, and you're good at sharing those. Like, definitely in your
Likewise.
books. I
Thank
feel like
you.
I appreciate you for doing that. Like, it's really cool.
Oh, well, thanks, man.
Um,
That means a
I
lot
love
coming from
hear
you.
whenever I hear those like small things, like you bring up a One Direction lyric, like I'd never heard this song, and now I have this little story that I can keep because you like shared it with me.
Yeah, those are so cool moments. Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
appreciate you saying that.
that
Yeah.
is really
And
awesome.
and
Yeah.
likewise, to be honest with you, I think anytime I have a conversation with you, it's like, wow, like there really is something going on here. It really is like
For
a marker of something happening. So it's
yeah.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I've been thinking about that, but kind of in like this way of like, oh, I don't even know what the end of this looks like. Like
Yeah.
I can have the things that I'm attempting to achieve, but even after all of those, I still have no idea what it looks like on the other side.
Yes. And me personally, I'm beginning more and more to fall in love with that concept, with that
Yeah.
idea. I actually think that's very beautiful and hopeful. Like, I don't know, but it has to be the best, right?
Yeah. Yeah. There's definitely a change in that. I think that's like to talk on like something that I kind of mentioned earlier, the Heraclitean idea. Heraclitus talked about how like the true nature of the universe is fire. It's like this ever changing fire, talking about how things are always in flux.
Mm.
And I think that that's like a really important concept that connects to me like spiritually, like in my understanding of physics. That like because of where I am now, like it very much talks to like it very much I can understand that on it's multivalent, polyvalent, you know.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that because um I believe there's like a stoic symbol of a fire. I don't remember like the exact details of it, but the idea is that it's connected with the term amor fati, love your fate.
Ah,
And it's because like the fire grows with whatever you place onto it. So it's like
yeah,
place all the best things onto it and it'll grow. And that's your fate.
yeah.
Something like that.
Oh man, I love that. I've been returning to the Stoics. I feel like I've kind of picked up different Stoics in my life.
Isn't it
There was a
interesting? I
time
feel like,
period
yeah, I don't
where
want
you
to cut you
said,
off. I just wanted to mention
no,
that
no, no.
I feel like that happens with me as well. And I imagine with a lot of people, it's always like a return to the
Yeah,
Stoics.
yeah, it always is. I had a lot of Seneca early on, and now I'm like Marcus Aurelius. Like I
Oof.
need to listen to meditations. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Meditations, man, really changes your
man,
life.
meditations is incredible. I recently went back to the Hava Mall, and that was
Oh,
like going from the Hava Mall to
oh my
meditations has been like,
God. Cannot
yeah,
believe you mentioned that. That is insane. Insane.
I
What is there something that Odin says that you carry with you?
Man, I feel like the entire Havamal I carry with me. There's not like if there is someone who is listening who is a man who has not read the Havamal, I really think they should read the Havamal. I
Hmm,
really do think that that is like one of the most important texts for a return to masculinity. I don't mean to go in this direction, but like I
wow.
absolutely like there's a huge benefit that modern men could get from the Havamal.
Interesting.
From
Very
the first
interesting.
page to the last. Like it's a very important text.
I believe strongly in the idea that the version of the book you have makes a huge difference.
Oh
Do you believe the
yes.
version that you have is the best version, or what
So
version do you recommend?
I listened to it. It's the Altrusion Grace Media. He has a version with music and without music, and it's like a voice, and it's like an incredible version of the Havamal. I don't know where he got his Havamal from, but I like re-listened to it
Um,
with the music, without the music. Yeah.
yeah, Viking music is a very different sensation.
For
Yeah.
sure it is. They have their whole I'm not sure if you're familiar with this. They have a form of magic called Galder, and it's like sound magic, like they're using their voices to like create like an emotion or an effect in the world. Yeah, I
Yeah.
thought that like yeah, it's if you listen to or not if you listen to if you watch the Northman, there's some Galder things that they do in
There
there.
is. I was thinking just of that when you mentioned it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that when they did the Galder in the Northman. That was a freaking that
Oh
was a
man.
banger of a movie, dude. Man,
And very underrated. It's ridiculous how underrated that film was. Like honestly, but it was an impressive piece of art.
yeah, for sure it was, man. Oh man, I love that movie.
Ah, yeah,
It
it's
starts with the narration, and all the
yes.
stuff, everything that happens
It
throughout the
has
entire
Ethan
movie.
Hawke in it of all people,
Oh,
right? Dude, that ending was insane.
oh
That ending
man,
is
I
like
was like, wow.
it's like a battle with Surtur himself, man. Literally,
Yes,
right?
man. It's crazy. Yeah,
Yeah,
man. Yeah, and how he deals with it, how he confronts that is
yeah,
is powerful. That's powerful.
yes. It's very yeah, that's a very unique film. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely is. I don't know when we'll get another movie like that. Like movies like that. Like how often do they come?
They don't come often. And yeah, they don't come often, man. I'll tell you that.
Yeah,
Do you
not
believe in
often
awkward
enough.
moments?
A little bit. Yeah, they happen.
Do you feel like that was an awkward moment?
No, no, no. I don't think it was too awkward.
Oh
No,
my goodness. Yeah, it's yeah, no, I feel you. It wasn't awkward. But it's something I'm curious about.
no.
Actually, I ask a lot of people this. I'm like, do you believe in awkward moments? And usually the answer is overwhelmingly no. And it's always like, not unless you make it
No.
awkward. It's like, oh, I like that.
Yeah,
People have that way of looking at things.
I don't think that there's a problem with awkward. I think that there's a place for awkward in the world.
Yeah. What
I
place do
I
you think
think
that is?
awkward can do a lot of things. Awkward can give space. I think there are comedians that use awkwardness to make their jokes funnier. I think it's a very filmmakers use it all the time. You watch what's his name? The guy who made Scott Pilgrim versus the World and Hot Fuzz. He uses awkwardness in his films all the time. I can't remember his name,
Hmm. I don't know
but
who he
he's
is.
a you don't know. Have you seen Scott Pilgrim versus the
I
World
have.
or
Yeah.
was. Those are both like they were both created. Same dude directed them.
Interesting.
Yeah, very funny movies.
Wow. Yeah, it's interesting you said that there is a place for awkward and that it has something about it. Yeah, I'm gonna have to think about that. That's something to think
Yeah, I
about for
think
sure.
it's a you know, it's a part of the human experience for sure. Being awkward, or having awkwardness. I think I'm an
Yeah,
awkward
yeah.
person sometimes, you know,
Do you?
and it's not necessarily on purpose. Yeah, for sure, but I don't like let it affect me or conversations that I have if they're awkward. It's just like a part of the conversation now.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, it's
yeah,
just yeah. It's like I was just talking to somebody recently and we were talking about confidence. And I was telling him like yeah, like there's definitely a part of it that's innate, it's natural, but it's also something that you have to continually cultivate. And I think that's what like
yeah,
awkwardness is that it's a part of that process of cultivating confidence. And like you
yeah. It
said, right? Like
definitely
it doesn't
is.
affect you, like because you're a part of that process. You don't allow it to.
No, 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 dude. I love this. Speaking of process, dude, Arthur M. Young, this is a sort of philosopher. I don't even know if you could call him. I don't know what you would call him, dude. Um, he created the first commercially available helicopter, the Bell helicopter. He made it. It was a study and process. He has this whole theory of process where he thinks instead of the theory of analysis, we should approach with the understanding the theory of process. Um, yeah, he's like an incredible dude. He has a book that is he uses the zodiac wheel in the idea of process. He uses the zodiac wheel to convey the idea of process. So he goes from Aries all the way up until Pisces, and they're all like a different part of the process.
Could you dissect what his ideas are that you just
Oh
mentioned?
man, I could get into the book, like I could pull the book out, I have it on my Kindle right here. He is yeah, so I got into him because of he has a book called The Geometry of Meaning, and there's also The Reflexive Universe. And I probably have some notes saved actually from this man. Where would those be? Those would probably be more interesting. But, nope, I have a lot of zodiac wheels drawn in my journal.
What culture, by the way, do you think contributed the most to alchemy?
Culture that contributed the most to alchemy. Dude, I'm gonna have to say okay, the cultivation of it. I think it was a thing practiced in many places, but the ones who were the most interesting, I would have to say would be like the Islamic the Islamic world. They kept it after. So I think there's like a back and forth kind of transmission of alchemy. Um, and after after Rome had fallen, all of that went to the Islamic world, and they were the ones who kept all of that information for such a long time period. And
Yeah.
yeah, they were the reasons why. I think they were the reason why the Goths were able to get those cathedrals built.
When you studied this, was there like a particular individual in the Muslim world that kept coming up?
Oh man, there are a few, but I don't remember their names. There are like three big names that I definitely remember like looking into. There are
Mhm.
three of them. I'm trying to get to. Oh, dude, and it's awesome. It's so awesome. In the reflexive universe, he connects the whole idea of process to the fall of humanity, or like what he considers the fall of humanity.
What does that mean?
That would be Adam and Eve having to leave the Garden of Eden.
And he equates it with what again?
The theory of process, what he calls the theory of process.
What is the theory of process, though?
The theory of process would be, so like right now we would be in the world like a world based on the theory of analysis, where we look at um the resultant of things that are going on, you know. One of the things that I kind of connect to this is like depression. You know, I think depression is much more of a symptom than it is just a like a infection itself, you know, like infect like a mental illness itself. It's the symptom of a process gone wrong before. And it would be us looking at processes more than analyzing results.
Interesting. I'm
Yeah,
curious.
he
Yeah,
explains it much better than I do. You know, he's much more articulate with explaining his theory than I am.
I was wondering how you hold on to proactively maintaining your interest in these things and doing your due diligence with them when the whole
Yeah.
world is before you.
I think I figured out that this is just the stuff that makes me happy. And I like being happy.
I
Like
love
there's
that.
not much outside of this stuff that makes me happy, you know, and I've just come to the realization like the other stuff that I do, like I'll play games every now and then, you know, but it's still like I know I'm not gonna feel that same satisfaction as I will when I read something new. You know, if I get a new book and it's like, oh, okay, I'm reading this now, you know, it's like that's where the excitement comes from. Like this,
Interesting. Wow. Yeah, it's something I was thinking about as well. Sometimes it's hard to like hold on to your interests. And like okay, let me relate it from this perspective. Sometimes it's hard to hold on to your interests when it seems like nobody else around you cares. I'm
oh,
wondering if you have
yeah.
the similar experience or if you feel like perhaps your wife suffices as a partner in sharing that
You
interest
know,
or
my wife isn't necessarily it's like if I'm talking to my wife, I'm like, hey, this scalar electromagnetic theory, or like this guy made this generator that does this thing. She doesn't understand. Like if I'm like, I need to understand differential equations so I can understand Lorentz transformation. She's like, I don't know what that means, you know? She's like,
yeah.
okay, you need to do that. Um, I think it relates to I think I've conveyed this to you before, but like how I feel connected to Loki, you know, and being like a other person, not an other person, but being like a thing somewhere that's different, you know. And have I talked to you about this before?
I'm sure we have touched on it, but please do
Yeah.
expand. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's just like it's like a it's like a weird feeling, you know. It's just like, oh, I'm it's like he's an Asgardian, but he's not an Asgardian.
We have talked about this, yes. But here's the
Yeah.
interesting thing, like for myself at least, even if I have an affinity for the myths, how do you still how do you still counter that feeling of being alone? Because the only thing that makes you feel less alone is the myths.
Yeah.
But those are just myths. You know what I mean?
I think I don't know if I've told you this quote before. I can't remember who said it, but and I'm gonna paraphrase it, but it's like a man who knows his place in the universe is never truly alone.
Mm. We might have discussed
Like
this, yes.
it sounds very heady and stuff like that, but I don't think when I'm doing this, I feel very alone. You know, I'm reading these. I do a lot of reading. You know, I'm very much interested in finding like treasures from the past because there's so much buried there.
Yeah.
Um, and it's like when I'm reading the work of Arthur M. Young, I'm not thinking like, oh, I'm just reading a book. Like I'm like, oh, this is a soul of a person. He took the time to sit down and write this and make it under like you can understand it. And it's like that with anyone. If I'm going back and I'm reading the work of E.T. Whitaker, it's like that is E.T. Whitaker there. It doesn't matter if it's like words on a paper or not. Like that's the
Yes.
man there.
Yes. That a very good point actually. That restores some hope inside of me.
Yes, man. You're never truly alone. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point, dude. This is gonna end, but let's jump on to the next one.
okay, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. Do you want me to? So I'll start with the quote that like inspired this talk about time. I concluded that structure could not properly portray time. That came from Arthur M. Young's The Reflexive Universe, and I'd gotten into the how the Maxwell equations. I was going to talk about how the Maxwell equations are able to portray rotation and stretching, which you don't get from the vector analysis of Heaviside, Gibbs, and Hertz. And man, see, I feel like it's like a weird. Okay, so Heaviside, Gibbs, and Hertz rewrote the Maxwell equations in vector analysis from their original quaternions, right? In quaternions, it's like a different type of algebra, than the vector analysis. That Heaviside would help create, right? So he rewrote the Maxwell equations in this new math that he had created, right? And what he had done is completely remove this ability to stretch and rotate, right? Because there wasn't a fourth dimension. There was only a three-dimension thing that goes on in vector analysis, right? Vectors being your X, Y, and Z. There's no fourth dimension. Fourth dimension. So that was like one of the cover-ups that I think really hindered our development of electromagnetics. And I was telling Omer here that they are able to produce some very interesting technology with these with using things like scalar electromagnetics, which comes more from Whitaker, but still the Maxwellian equations,
I'm
the
curious with
original Maxwellian equations.
yeah, with your interest in all these things, what do you think is the trajectory you're aiming at?
You want like I'm interested in making things. That is I think a big motivator. I think that there's like one of the inspirations of mine are what people would call UFOs or UAPs. Like that is the type of technology that I'm really looking at reaching.
Do you believe in aliens?
Do I believe in aliens? Man, that's an interesting question. I believe in crypto terrestrials. And what I mean by crypto terrestrials are things that live here on Earth, travel through Earth, travel to Earth, and they aren't understood what they are. Like they aren't the regular human being or regular carbon-based life that's here. I do think that there are things like that. Where they come from, I don't know. I have some interesting thoughts about different things, like Mothman and Dogman. I think those are like interesting cases.
What are those?
Mothman and Dogman. So
Yeah.
there's Mothman who they say appears before like really catastrophic events like all over the world. Like they say there was a Mothman before 9/11 that came around. And I think you can also correlate Mothman sightings to Dogman sightings. You'll have people see Dogman and Mothman around the same time period. And there's very interesting things that happen with these cases. Like there is this type of conjunctivitis, so like pink eye that people get from nuclear radiation. They only get this type of pink eye from nuclear radiation. and people who have like these Mothman or Dogman encounters will have this type of pink eye conjunctivitis. And I think like these are some of the more like that I think is really interesting.
But are those like actual entities that appear, or like, well, what are the sightings like?
So so the Dogman sightings are typically pretty aggressive, where like the Dogman will like go up and attack people.
They see a dog
Or
man.
yeah, like a man with
Okay.
a dog head. Mothman is like kind of looks like a little different, but I believe they both have red eyes. Um, and Mothman is so Mothman has attacked people, I think, but they think Mothman only attacks when he's provoked. There's a there's one guy, I forgot his name. He wrote these books called the Mothman Prophecies. I haven't read them yet, but like they're I've just looked into the Mothman stuff, and I'm interested in interdimensional travel. So like
Hmm.
I'm always on the lookout for things like a Mothman, or like
Wow.
what I would say is like looks like a portal situation to me.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was not aware of that before.
Yeah, it's definitely a weirder kind of story. They're older. I don't think there have been many recent Mothman sightings aside from the one in in 9/11. I don't know how recently someone has seen Mothman.
Yeah, it's yeah, I've never heard of that, but that's something to consider. A Mothman and a dog man.
Yeah, Mothman and Dogman. I think they're very connected. I think they come here together, you know. I think there are some cases of that. These are just theories, you know. When I look at stuff, my brain is like, okay, what's going on there?
Yeah. What do you think is like the wildest theory that you think about?
The wildest theory that I think about, the wildest theory. You know, I don't really like when I'm thinking about this stuff, there's nothing that I'm like, oh, this is weird. You know, like in my head, it's just like, oh, this is just parts of life.
Where do you think people should draw the lines between like plausible theories and then just like something
Very
ridiculous?
weird stuff. You know, I definitely think there is a line. I think when there's like definitely it looks like there's an agenda behind something. I think that there's a line there to always look at when it looks like there's contrived narratives about things. Um, for like stuff that are like conspiracy theories, I definitely think that there's like people who go very far with conspiracy theories.
I'm not sure if we've ever discussed this. I feel like we probably have. Lizard people, do you believe in them?
Lizard people. Oh man, lizard people. See, like these are one of the crypto terrestrials that I think could, you know, exist. Do they control the government, you know, and stuff like that? I don't know. But is there some type of reptilian humanoid that lives about the earth? You know, maybe. Like
Maybe.
I don't discount that, man. I think there's so much weird. Like I've heard a story about Dwight D. Eisenhower meeting with aliens. You know,
Hmm.
from the granddaughter or great granddaughter, Laura Eisenhower. She goes on shows and she talks about how Sheila's like researched her grandfather talking to aliens or her great grandfather. I don't
Hmm.
know exactly. I think it's her grandfather. Yeah, Dwight D. Eisenhower's granddaughter's going around talking about how he talked to aliens. You know, like that's I don't know. You know, I think the world
Yeah.
might be a little weirder.
I mean, all this talk of these things, I'm wondering like if you ever studied the jinn in more depth or not really.
Oh man, the gin is what all that electromagnetism stuff, the gin is what got me interested in that.
Really? What's
Not
the
like
story
me
behind that?
talking to a gin. the idea of Jin being smokeless fire.
That's a big
What is
thing, eh?
smokeless fire? Yes, that is a big thing, man. It's what is smokeless fire, you know? Um, in my brain, when I heard smokeless fire, I kind of was like, oh, is this electromagnetic? Smokeless fire, like electricity, you know? It's like something that makes fire with no fire. It's a spark.
Yeah.
It's like it makes me think in that sort of direction. And one thing I know about very arid places, as you know, like much of the Middle East is now, where there are like things that happen with Jinn or have happened, or there's stories of things happening with Jinn. It's I've heard that there's a thinning of what you would call a veil between different worlds.
Yeah. I think I've heard something like that before too.
I've been very interested in the Jinn, man. There's a YouTube channel, Mysterious Middle East. They have so many different of these just stories. You know, they talk about the Jinn and like different. Yeah, they talk about so much stuff, dude.
I don't know if I ever discussed this with you, but how like in the Muslim tradition, the belief is that before humans populated the earth, there were like centuries of history of like different jinn kingdoms and
Yeah,
wars and all these different lives going on Earth before all that. How fascinating is that?
I think that's incredibly interesting. I think that that is that when I am looking at things on Earth, I'm like that makes a lot of sense to me.
Mm.
When I'm looking at like more history stuff, like I'm like, yeah, that would make sense that they're like even like the idea of like there being older kingdoms than Atlantis, you know, there are things that I've heard about stuff like that. And it's like I don't and it's not always humans that these people are talking about, you know, like there are other races of things that people talk about on Earth that are pre-human.
Yeah.
Yeah. It would be very interesting to me. Like I think it makes sense. I think it's a very interesting thing. I think that they could overlap, like they would still be here, you know, those kingdoms, and we wouldn't necessarily see them because it would be a different thing.
Realm. Yeah.
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 Laid
No,
right on top of ours, and we would just pass through them and have no notice.
yeah. It's something. Yeah. It's definitely something to think about. Um, yeah.
Are you good? I
Yeah. I mean,
can tell if you were
honestly,
thinking.
yeah, no, just honestly, like I'm just thinking like about conversations, man. Really just conversations. Like this is cool that we're having this, but yeah, I don't know. I just don't know.
You don't know.
Yeah. Sometimes you just don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah. There's a lot about electromagnetism that I'm interested in, and it did start with the gym. Like
Yeah.
I was like, because I was wondering, I've thought like, how would a entity, if there were entities here, what like we wouldn't see them, you know, like they don't just appear all the time as like physical things.
Are you familiar with the idea of how like a dog, a donkey, and I believe it's a rooster, if you hear them make noise in the night, they've seen something.
Oh no, I haven't heard that.
Yeah. And it's like I believe the prophet, peace be upon him, he said something like when you hear that, you should like, recite a prayer or something. You should be cautious.
Yeah,
Interesting.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I definitely that's interesting. I think with my pets, I see them staring off, you know, sometimes, like just at nothing.
Yeah.
And
I
like,
look at
what are
my
you looking
cat.
at?
My cat is like I'm looking at him, but he's looking at something like behind me. It's like, what's going on?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like you seeing something I'm not seeing. What's there?
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's also an idea that like jinns can be they can appear to you in the mortal form, like a human form, which I
yeah,
thought is interesting because it's like I wonder like have I met one, you know? And they can be good or bad too, so that's like another interesting
yeah,
aspect of it. Yeah.
yeah. I think that that's an interesting thing to like think about is if there are like I guess if they can appear as mortals, like you probably have seen one and you just didn't even know and you just walked right past them. Or like maybe you said something to them or they said something to you.
Yeah. Isn't that so interesting? Yeah.
What are you thinking about, dude?
Well, I think what I've been thinking about, to be honest with you, is like I've just been thinking about other things. You know what I mean? But things that I'm
Mm,
not sure how to communicate. And so I think just one of them is like how I told you in like the very beginning, before we recorded, of how like the past 2, 3 months of my life was really just kind of being sucked into the worlds of like the people around me. And now I'm kind of out of that. So it's kind of like a rehabilitating state. Like, oh, that's right.
yeah, it's like
Like
a
I'm not in that world anymore, you know?
yeah. Where do you think you're moving towards? Or like in your recalibration, where do you think like internally you feel things adjusting?
Um, I feel like if I think about it, I'll have the answer. But there's always that pressure on the clock, eh? Like, oh man, I'm being recorded type thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know,
for
but
sure. Yeah.
I guess you are the sort of man to talk to about this sort of thing. Like, how you can be so drawn to a person, but not fully like, okay, I'll tell you this. There's an interesting thing Sigmund Freud says. Oh, how bold a person becomes when they're sure of being loved. And I was like, damn, that hits hard.
Yeah, man. Oh, that's it.
Yeah,
I love that. Yeah. I
yeah.
heard I heard I don't know who it was, but I thought it was very interesting. I it was he was saying like he was talking about how people will love God because they'll go to heaven and it's like or you'll love God because you don't want to go to hell. It's like do you just love God to love God?
Hmm. Interesting. I actually I like how you mentioned this because like for instance, the people that you love, well, what is your answer to that question? Do you love them for who they are? Do you love them for their achievements or their XYZ
Oh
or
man. I feel like the upbringing I had, I really got to see, or I got to figure out what love was, before I really settled into like marrying my wife. So like I understood what love would be. And my like she's not a perfect person, but I love my wife and I love her family. And I love my cat. My cat's like if you knew my
Freya?
cat, man, you'd be like you'd be like, you love this cat? Why do you love this cat? She's crazy, man. Um, but it's definitely like I feel like truly loving something is like a you there's a persistence that you have even when it's not perfect. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't cease to be everything that you want, even when it's not what you want.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah,
Do
that's
you do
really
you
what that's what it yeah.
do you remember how long it took you to tell your wife that you liked her?
Honestly, it didn't take very long. Like my like I asked her out on a date, It wasn't it was like I saw her and I asked her out on well, I guess no, because we had kind of like hung out like a few times, like two or three times before I asked her out. But yeah, I it was a little nerve-wracking before I had confirmed that she had liked me for sure. It
How
was
did you
like
get that confirmation?
I asked her out on a date. She said yeah, and I was like, okay, I think she likes me.
Hmm, that's
Yeah, I don't
cool.
think she would have said yes if she didn't like me.
I'm curious though. Did you tell her like that you liked her like in person or through text?
We were definitely texting a lot before I asked her on a date, so that I think there was like I was communicating my attraction to her through the text before.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. I definitely appreciate and love my wife. Like she's definitely a very like I think we are so different, Like I think there's a huge difference in like the things that we're attracted to, but I still think that there's like a place where they meet up, because like we're both like, oh, we just love taking care of animals. It's like, oh, we want to take care of animals. Like we love birds, we love horses, cows, chickens, our dogs and cats. Like I want some gerbils and I want to get pigeons. I really like pigeons. I think pigeons are real cool looking things. Um, yeah, it's just like interesting that I met someone who I was like, she also loves animals. That's like her main thing. It's just like all about animals. But in this other direction of my life, it's like I'm interested in this, and she likes painting stuff. It's like a different like she's interested in looking at like home decor and stuff like that, and I'm like, yeah, it's just like we're just very different people. I
Are you
think
the more
there are
extroverted?
more. I can be. I definitely think I can be. I think sometimes I hit a wall, and then just like I run out of energy. And then she has to take over, but then like, most of the time it's me.
Hmm, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was your wife ever mean to you like before?
Was she ever mean to me before? Do you mean
Yeah.
like ever, like in our relationship?
Yeah, like before you got married, like was she ever dry to you or mean?
Oh, I don't think so. She's a very like sweet and loving person, Like if she's upset, she could be upset, but she's very like wears her heart on her sleeve.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, these were the sort of things I was thinking about lately, really is what it is, which is why I've been
Mhm.
kind of different in this conversation.
Yeah. I think it is like are you writing about these things? Like, where are you going about exploring them?
Yeah, definitely writing, but it kind of goes back to that Sigmund Freud quote. Kind of hits hard. Like
Oh, yeah.
it's almost like a paralyzing, a petrifying feeling when you're so sure of a thing. It's like, oh, that's it's interesting.
It can be. Whatever whatever like moving forward would be, it's just going to be moving forward. Like you can't get paralyzed, or like you don't want to be paralyzed. Maybe not for too long. Maybe paralysis is an interesting place to be, but not for too long.
Definitely not for too long. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Damn.
I think you should make films, dude. I really think, or not to like put you on the spot and be like anything like that, but I think you have like an interesting mind to, or you have like the perspective to portray things like when you're exploring these things.
Hmm.
Not even like if they're films, even if they're just like written dialogues between people, I think that they would like I've seen the other stuff that you did, and it was like, yeah, that stuff was awesome.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, actually, come to think of it, um, I don't think we've spoken since then. What did you think of that short film I made?
Oh,
Blind. Do
dude,
you
it was
remember it?
yes, I remember it. It was I thought it was very interesting. Like well, blah blah blah. It was interesting.
Yeah.
um, I I uh I think that there's like a you synthesize parts of the male experience, as being portrayed in like a character that was relatable, or like you like when you were listening, like when you were seeing it and it was black, it was like you were very like in it, you know, and it was like, oh, this is interesting.
Yeah. I don't know if I explained it to you, but it was supposed to be black because he was blind. And then in the end he removes the glasses so you see that he's blind. And it kind of ties
Oh,
back,
I
yeah, to the
yeah,
story of Jacob being blinded because he was so sad about Joseph being gone.
yeah. Oh man, that is really nice. I didn't know all this connected to that.
Yeah. Yeah, but thank you for liking it, and I thank you for the kind words. Yeah, I think it helped some people. Some people did tell me that it helped them, and
That's awesome, dude.
that's nice to hear, you know?
I think
Yeah.
you really have like like you have a capacity to help people in that way. Like I think you under like when you talk about media, right? Like you will bring up a One Direction quote, and I think that that's like an incredible place to like go to, Like yeah, like I have not dug in it One Direction lyrics yet. Um, but like it might not be a
Yeah.
bad place to go. Um, like I think you can find these things in places, or like when we've talked about films, or you talk about documentaries that you've seen, it's like you pull out very poignant I guess like lessons from them. Not necessarily lessons. They're like what I would call process. You pull out these very poignant processes for I think we kind of talk in that direction of like it being a process, like the podcast itself is a process.
Yes. I thank you, man. I couldn't find enough words to thank you for your compliment. I appreciate it, you know? And yeah, it's something that I'll definitely keep in mind. If yeah, yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Even if you don't go in that direction, dude, like whatever you do, I'm sure you're going to help people. Like you have a very light energy about you. I think you do help people.
Thanks, man. I hope so. And I'm not just saying this to say this. I mean it. I think that about you too. We've discussed the role of the teacher many times, and I think like if there'd be a master of that, be you, because you very much what I enjoy about our conversations, Roderick, is I don't feel like I'm ever really judged. It just seems like, oh yeah, the conversation goes where it goes, but it's just
Yeah.
that the honest novelty, the honest curiosity. It's never like passing a judgment on things. So I applaud you for that.
Yeah.
And I think that's important when being a
That's
teacher.
that's a that's who did I get that from? I believe that's Seneca.
Hmm.
Uh to it's like relates to that. Yeah, he talks about like passing judgment on things, and he just talks about like it's better to observe things and just have them be what they are than to pass judgment on everything that you come by.
Yeah.
Like I don't think that there's like a necessity for judgment of every person, of everything that they do. It's like they are a human being and they're having an experience. Like I'm doing the same exact thing as you.
Yes, the Stoics talk about this. Like you don't have to have an
Yeah.
opinion about everything.
No, man. It's not a no. You can explore things, but it's not like you need to plant your feet anywhere when you're exploring these things and be like, this is where it stands.
Yeah, no, very, very good point. Yeah, yeah. There was something else that was coming to my mind as we were speaking about these things. Oh, the voice. Like my last episode, I just uploaded it. I felt like when I was talking to my friend, my voice was different than it is with speaking with you, than it is with speaking with person X, Y, or Z. And I noticed that, and it's interesting because it makes me think, what is the voice? Where is it coming from? And why is it
Yeah.
different when it speaks to different people?
Yeah, voice is definitely very interesting. Like there's like we could talk about Galder again, like that is them using voice magic or any like praiseful singing is also that. Um
There's a guy, right? He runs into me outside the library. He's like, dude, I just saw you and I had to like I want to give you the message of Christ. I'm like, okay, cool. Like let's sit in the library and we talked and I really appreciated the gesture. And we're having like a cool discussion. And then I ask him, so why should I follow your avenue of Christianity? And the response he gave me was I wasn't expecting that at all. He's like, have you heard of tongues? I'm like, tongues, explain it to me. He's like, well, it's what happens when the Holy Spirit overcomes you and you start speaking a language that's not of this world, but it's like a language. And I just thought it was it's a very interesting response. Like, why should I follow your avenue of Christianity? And the response is speaking in tongues. What do you
yeah,
make of that, man?
I think that's very like that's I think that's very interesting. Like that's a I wonder if that has convinced someone. That's like my first thought is like, who is this brought over? Like
Yeah.
if he says that, like it probably has like someone has asked them something before and he said this to them and it might have worked out well for him. Um
I don't know, but yeah. I mean, again, I really appreciate the guy's like gesture of, trying to share his message with me, but that thing was such a unexpected thing to hear, you know?
I think that is like a I don't, I don't think that that's like a man, that's crazy. I think that that's like an interesting approach to try to get someone to join something. It's like we speak a language that is not of this world. Oh
Yeah.
man.
Yeah, because you mentioned
And
Galder, and I was thinking of that. It's like, and it connects to the
yeah.
voice too. Like, what is going on? Where is this manifesting from?
Oh, well, okay. So this is also kind of the the power of sound is kind of like connected to man, where would I even connect this? Because I've been trying to understand this as well, but there seems to be a case for sonication or using sound to produce effects that are other like what we would consider magic. Um like different uses of cymatics together do interesting things. Are you familiar with cymatics?
I'm not.
So it's different frequencies. They take a frequency and they'll have like a surface that'll vibrate or they'll use water or something like that and they'll put a certain frequency to it and it'll a lot of them create these very interesting patterns, right? There are a lot of frequencies that create these like if you put sand on top of these vibrating materials, it'll create a pattern for you, like not just from the sound. Um, And that's always very interesting to me. I definitely have been getting into the power of shapes, like how configuring something according to certain geometries produces certain results.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I had a friend, he has some similar interests to you, but he told me something that had kind of turned him away from this sort of stuff was how he was unearthing a correlation, or I don't know why I did that, unearthing a correlation between, as we've spoken, the esoteric and science. And he mentioned Jack
Mm.
Parsons in particular. I'm curious if that's
Oh,
ever
okay.
like turned you away from
Yikes.
this sort of stuff.
Like stuff with Jack Parsons?
Well, just that idea, the connection between the esoteric and science.
Oh, I, 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 it's never turned me away from it. Like I've always, if it is esoteric, I'm like, well, I want to see it, you know? That's like a motivator for me when things are kind of obscured, or they're hidden in metaphor. Those never turn me away. Yeah, that's like what is going on here.
Interesting. And do you think it doesn't turn you away because why do you think it doesn't turn you away? I mean, I know you mentioned the interest in the obscure, but
Yeah, I think I can figure things out. I like I like there's something like I'll talk to someone about anti-gravity and they'll be like, well, anti-gravity is not real. And I'll be like, well, if it's not real, then I'm gonna figure out how to do it. But I know it is real. Like I have this attitude that's like I don't care if you're telling me it's not like a real thing. I'm like I know it's a real thing because there is gravity. So you would have the negation of gravity be possible as well. Like this is just the way I feel about things.
hmm,
The esoteric is like that as well. It's like if you're gonna hide things in stories and metaphors, I'm gonna figure out these stories and metaphors.
I like that. That's interesting. Yeah.
That's like one of the Promethean urges, I believe, or like the Promethean Atlantean, so being Atlas. Um, I, 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 the at
There's one thing real quick that I wanted to ask you, which was are you familiar with the Miyamoto Musashi? He was referred to by a name, Niton, which means two heavens. When you hear
yeah,
that, what does that mean to you?
two heavens. I don't. So Miyamoto Musashi, yeah, Miyamoto Musashi. I'm familiar with, but his other name I didn't know about until now. Two heavens.
Two heavens.
There being an earthly heaven and a heavenly heaven.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I see. That's what I see there. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you? What do you?
I don't know. I just remember I was reading that in a book and I was like, wow, that's a very interesting name for a person. Two heavens.
Two heavens. He was the man who carried two swords. Like he's the one who like mastered this new type of fighting where he used two swords.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also thought it was a stark revelation that your middle name is Isa, which in Arabic means Christ, but in
Yes.
Japanese means meritorious.
Meritorious. I don't I Yeah, I don't think that they are disconnected, like the idea of Christ being meritorious. I don't
Yeah.
think that yeah, I would say that Christ is incredibly meritorious, like
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I think it's an interest. I didn't even know that my name was connected to that until this year. Like I just recently discovered this connection.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, did you read anything else in the Quran that like caught your eye? Like, oh damn, what is that?
mm, there's a lot of stuff in there with stuff here. So I do like the way the Quran goes through goes through Jonah, you know. Um so the prophets, not necessarily the prophets, but like people who have done, I guess, like work for God, their stories have become very interesting to me. Um so yeah, like the different prophets have been pretty interesting to me. As far as like stuff that I'm like, what is that? I don't think so. I think this when I read the Quran, it's like it's not confusing, you know? It's not like I go through it and I am like, okay, like there are different cultural conventions and stuff like that, but it very much I feel like it's kind like the understanding of like life through the Quran, I feel like is like a very human one, you know? Like it's
Yeah,
though it's being like the understanding of human life is being portrayed like it's from God, so it's like it understands what human life is.
yeah. I don't know if I'd ever discussed this with you, but just a lesson that I think about a lot lately is the idea of Moses and how he's being crafted at every stage of his life for the next one, then for the next one, for the next one. And I just think it exemplifies like us as individual humans. Like right now, you're being crafted, I'm being crafted for the next thing, the next thing. It's kind of like that thing we
Yeah,
discussed at the beginning, right? The cusp of the end. It's like, oh, that's what it is.
yeah. And we don't know what that looks like, like no
Yeah.
matter what we set our sights on, it's like what we change into or like what happens is like
There's this idea I
not
was thinking
predictable.
about in the shower today, and it was like, am I upset that certain things that I wanted didn't go my way? And perhaps I'm thinking fantastically here, but I like to think this way that no, in fact, what it is those things that I wanted, they were actually a part of my destiny. I was on that
Yeah,
trajectory, but it's just like as time passed on and different things happened in my life and the different actions and choices I made, and then, God's ultimate decree, it's like, well, you swerved a little. So it's like initially it was a part of your destiny, but because of
yeah,
XYZ, it turned a little. That's what I like to think. It's like it's always been a part of the destiny. It's just what you ended up doing that changed it.
yeah. It's like what is our role here? You know? Like what are we doing here? Like what are we playing out every day, when we do things? It's like what steps are we taking?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
like that. I like that. I think the steps that we've been going in, like you and I, have been very interesting. Like I could not have predicted that the information that I have right now, I would have known or even would have thought about like a year ago.
yeah,
Like if you would have told me this is like the stuff that I've been looking at is what I'd be looking at. I'd be like, what are you talking about? Like I don't know any
yeah,
of those words.
yeah, yeah. Good point. That's very true. Or even like the people you meet, it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
who, how, where are they from? What
Yeah. How
about
is that
them?
gonna happen?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Very,
it's
very
interesting.
interesting. I think you're like an artist, dude. Like you're very much like you're more things than just an artist, but I definitely think you have this artistic. I don't like using that word, like really. It's like you
Yeah,
you have this.
I don't like using it either, but
It's
thank you.
like
I still take it as a
like a
compliment.
weird mind. What I was more so trying to go to is that like you can connect life and be curious about it, while living it. It's like you're examining life while you're stepping through life. And there's some
Yes.
people who spend their time just examining life, and there's people who just step through life. And like I definitely see you as someone who like is doing both. You take time to step, and then you take time to look around and say, like, where am I stepping? Like what am I in now that I've stepped here?
Yes, thank you. I take that as a compliment. And honestly, same, same. And it's again always good to have conversations with you because it gives me some hope that I'm not the only one like this. Like there's other people out there that
No,
are
man.
also doing this. It's interesting.
Yeah, we got
Yeah,
to get all of us together in like one place, and
yeah,
we can sit around and look and see what we're looking at.
yeah. I have been saying this for like a year now, and I think there's truth in it. That's why I'll say it here too. It feels like the tide is turning. Like it
Mm,
feels like things are changing and
yeah,
people
man,
and like trajectories and like things are changing. And not
for sure
necessarily
they
in a
are.
bad way, like in a very exciting way, so to speak.
I would agree with you. I would agree with you. I think that there's like some weird fear mongering that some people are stepping onto, but I definitely am more hopeful about like the future than I am. And I feel the same thing that you're talking about, these tides changing.
Especially in Houston, I feel that. Like with all the different people I'm acquainted with, it's like wow, like
Yeah,
Houston is something going on here.
there's definitely a type of growth, like a very interesting thing growing here.
Yeah, and it's always so exciting to know the people that you know. Cause like wow, that's just right now I had a conversation. People are destiny. It's like wow, the people you know and how they like interact with you and how they influence you. It's like wow, that's
Yeah,
very
dude, that sounds
fascinating.
pretty Vedic. That sounds like a Vedic idea right there.
Really, why do you go to Vedic?
Yeah, that sounds like a little Vedic, right? Like it sounds like the understanding of karma,
Explain it and how you connect
like
it with
the
this.
people the people you meet being destiny.
Hmm.
It's you playing out your karma. The people you meet, the situations you come into. It's like those things are shaping you, and they're also your karma.
I guess, I guess from a Vedic lens, yeah, yeah, I guess.
Well, it's like interesting. It's like, what would your karma be? It's like, is karma like a past thing or a future thing? I guess like Vedic is pretty cyclical, right? So you would see, I guess in that cycle, right? You would see like if we think fractally, they're big cycles and smaller cycles. Um, those smaller cycles that you play out are the same thing as the bigger karma. I'm going completely different direction. But the the situations you come into are like a part of those cycles, and the people that you meet are part of those different cycles that go
Oh,
all around
okay,
wheels.
okay, I see
Yeah,
what you're saying. Yeah,
and
yeah,
you
it's
are
always
being shaped by these things. Oh, you keep going, dude.
no, you're good, you're good. Yeah, we always are being shaped by these things. It's very true. Yeah, and as we were discussing before, like like when you journal and you kind of like look back at your memories and glance at them and like the names of the people that were in your life, it's like wow, damn, like they're gone now, maybe, but they definitely played a role. They imparted something on your
Yeah,
mind or your
there's
soul.
something that they left an impression,
Yes,
on
I
like
feel
what
like
you became.
almost everyone that I meet, I feel like they leave a piece of them with me, and I leave a piece of me with them. Almost everyone.
Yeah, dude. That's when, yeah, that I think is good. I think you have like good relations with humans, like to other people.
Thank you. I would hope so. And I think you do too. Would you say?
I think that people get very interesting lessons from, well, not lessons, but they get very interesting things from me. The things I leave people with can be very like weird or awkward or confusing. I think at sometimes, they're yeah.
Hmm.
I think if you so when you talk about going too far, I think there certainly have been times that like the things I allow myself to like play out, just the rabbit holes I'll get into, like they leave little impressions on me whenever I go through them, and then I come back from one, and I'm like, I have acquainted myself with all this information. I think it's normal, and I just like talk to like
Yeah.
someone about it.
Yeah.
And they're like, "What?" It's like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, man.
Yeah. No, I feel that. I feel that. Yeah. Yeah. No, I definitely know what you're saying there. But I've
Yeah.
mentioned this to you before too. This is another thing that I enjoy about our conversations is like I can throw something bizarre at you, but you'll pick it up and run with it. Like you just kind of
Oh
speak the
yeah.
lingo, you know? It's like you know what I'm saying, even if it's not like the entire picture, but you like I can't just do that with everyone. Like there's very few people where it's like, "Oh, you know that myth," or "Oh, you know what I'm referencing." You know? It's
Yeah,
like it's
I think we've like you and I have both spent a lot of time looking at mythology. Like there's definitely been a mythological influence, and
yeah,
I think it's super interesting when you meet someone who's like, yeah, I'm interested in mythology, and you can talk about mythology to them. Some people are more like into one thing. I think you and I are both like pretty dispersed throughout them.
eclectic's the word, eh?
Yeah, eclectic. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Is this the end of this one?
It can be if you want, dude. I was,
It's up to you.
yeah, yeah. No, I was gonna talk about like how Persia was kind of like that. Persia was eclectic in its understanding of mythology.
Okay, I want to hear that. Do you mind going to another
Oh,
session?
yeah, we can
Okay.
just like fights and stuff. Yeah, that like Berserk is definitely a banger. I think if you like the Havamal and you like Castlevania, like you'll definitely enjoy Berserk.
Hmm. Yeah, Castlevania was an interesting one. You know, like there's TV shows or books or movies, and they also like when you watch them, they stand as a marker in time of your life.
Mm,
Like
yeah,
Castlevania has
for
definitely been
sure.
one of those for me. It's like, oh yeah, just one summer I was just like working the whole way through. Then I'd come home at night and just watch Castlevania. It's like,
Watch
oh
Castlevania.
yeah,
Yeah, Castlevania, I think is a very interesting thing. I think it's Dracula, and
yeah.
it's like who's the villain in this situation? Well, it's pretty obvious who the villains are. You have like the guys that you're rooting for and the guys that you're not. Were you rooting for Dracula? When you were watching it, what were you thinking?
I just thought it was a very strange story, actually. Um, he has a plot to destroy the whole world. It's like, it seemed like I don't remember the full details, but I just remember thinking like, this is a goofy plot, you know? But I think
Yeah,
later on,
yeah,
it had like these niche plots, and it was like, oh, this is interesting,
yeah.
and
They're
like
very
occultic stuff
interesting.
going on. It was, yeah,
Oh, dude, yeah, I love Castlevania for that. The old games have it in there too. Like the old Castlevania games, they have like weird little symbols in strange places or storylines and stuff.
there was just one episode
Castlevania
that
is
I
a little rabbit
remember.
hole.
Yeah, I
No,
remember
yeah,
this.
you keep going.
Yeah, sorry. Um, one episode I remember in particular is like they show up to this town and like the church is like running everything, but it's not like a
Yeah,
Christian church. It's like they're like worshiping like something in the basement.
yeah,
Like, yo, what's going
yeah,
on? So they break in. It's like, oh my God, the monster at the altar. It's kind of like, whoa,
yeah.
that's kind of creepy.
That's incredibly creepy, and I don't think it's far from what like has gone on here. You know, like
What do
on
you
like
mean?
in like people worshiping, yeah, like very destructive things. I think we've seen humans worship very destructive things, and I don't think humans have to worship destructive things.
Yeah. Do you remember that episode by chance? That one?
I remember, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's
Not like everything that happened in the episode, but I remember the monster being worshipped. Yeah, or at the
yeah,
altar.
yeah. It's yeah. It's interesting how you mentioned that about like worshiping like destructive things. You mentioned before the eclectic culture of Persia. Has there ever
Yes.
been anything you're familiar with where they were worshiping something destructive?
Ooh, I would the early Persians and the Mithraic cults there. You know, the
Is Mithra a destructive deity?
not intrinsically. I don't believe so.
He's like
I don't
Phoebus,
believe that.
right? He's kind of a savior in a
Yeah,
way.
yeah. Yes, that's why I say not intrinsically. But if you're a cattle raiding culture or like a Mediterranean pirate, you know, you're like it's like it. There were certain realities to life then, you know, that I'm understanding of. But I do think that there were like certain acts of cruelty that were performed, you know, in like a ceremonial way to like appease deities, you know. And it's like,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I think the cannibalistic Vedic cults also like
Is that
kind
a
of
thing?
that is a thing.
Really?
Yeah, there are cannibalistic Hindus. Not like Hindus, Hindus, but like the like
Yeah.
Vedic cults. Yeah.
Wait, yeah, yeah. Agories, yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You
Yeah.
know them.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know those
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah. Yeah. Dude, actually this is something to discuss with you. I was introduced to the idea that Tantra is actually just like black magic. Were you
Hmm.
aware of this?
I definitely the there are definitely things in Buddhism that I've recognized as black magic for a while.
Like
Um,
what?
like when you talk about the tantric Buddhism, there are some Buddhist monks that like invite demons to come into their bodies.
Really?
Like that's a yeah, that's a practice in Tibet.
Why is that? What are they hoping to gain from that?
They ask you questions, so they hold a little ceremony and they'll have their priest ask the demon questions while it possesses another. Their
Interesting.
monks. Yeah.
Wait. I'm familiar with this. Yes, yes. It's kind of like speaking in tongues, huh?
Yeah, yeah, I
It,
would say so. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's interesting. The idea of like allowing something to overcome you, it's
Mm.
I don't know. Respectfully, I don't know that that's a very charming appeal.
I I don't I so I would say for some people, no, that does not sound appealing. But there are other like there's more than one type of mind here, you know. I think there are some people who are like interested in that, you know, like that's attractive to them.
That is, yeah. No, that's true. Um, yeah. I don't know if I've ever asked you, do you feel like you've ever had any experience where you felt like something penetrated you?
No, I don't think things like me. Like I've never had like a ghost experience. Um like there's never been anything weird that happens around me. I just think like that kind of stuff doesn't like me. It's
Mm,
kind of what yeah, I don't know. There's
yeah.
never been any like I talk to so many people and they're like they have like some weird story and it's like I'm just like I don't I've never had anything happen to me.
Thankfully, eh?
Yeah, I don't. It's not like I want anything to happen to me. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's just yeah. I think it's interesting.
yeah, it is. It's interesting how it always comes back to this sort of a topic. Like we'll talk about so many different things, but then it always somehow comes back to like something esoteric, paranormal, mythological.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's I think those are great connectors. The paranormal, the mythological. Those I feel like are very connected, and they're sitting in the middle of a bunch of things, tying those together. Have you ever seen there's this interesting graphic that I saw. It was like a graphical depiction of all the cross references between fields, and it makes this big circle. It's like they're all reaching, like they're all connecting to each other and going in a circle, right? But it's like what's in the middle of that circle connecting everything? Like that's the stuff I'm interested in.
What do you think is that thing?
The like what we're talking about, the things in the esoteric, I feel like there's humanity is like connected a lot of this stuff already through what we've explored. Um, and there's a obfuscation and sort of hiddenness to that stuff in the center. It's like a lot of people feel like, oh, I can't go there and touch that stuff. I'm not one of those people.
Hmm. What do you think makes a person able to touch that stuff?
An Atlantean urge to
I
to carry
like
the
that.
weight of the world on their shoulders. Yeah.
Oh, damn. The way you said it, it hit hard. It hit
It's
hard.
not just Prometheus. Prometheus, like there are titans that are connected to Prometheus, and Atlas is one of those.
But it's interesting that you used the word urge because one of my poems, I don't know if you got a chance to glance at it, it's about Atlas, and it's like, it's basically saying he never wanted to do that.
Yeah,
It was like put on to him.
put on
So it's
him.
interesting that you say urge. What's your
I
rationale behind that? I mean,
there's
it's a
something
cool
in Atlas
statement.
that I admire, you
Yeah.
know, in that even if he's unwanting to do it, he does it. Now, it's like cast on him. But there are things that are cast on me that I have to carry. The entire like the weight of certain things is like I feel is like on me, you know. I think a lot of people feel that way, and it's like you carry that weight on your shoulders.
Would you prefer to be Sisyphus or Atlas?
You know, so the Sisyphus story, I think Sisyphus is a very, I was into the Albert Camus, the myth of Sisyphus stuff, but I think Sisyphus is like he's kind of greedy, you know.
Hmm.
But he's a charming figure, of course. You look at the Albert Camus myth of Sisyphus. I like to imagine that Sisyphus is smiling, and it's like he would be smiling because he's gonna take everything he can get, and that's admirable too. It's not a not admirable thing, but I do appreciate those titans very much. The titans of the Ashuras. I know they're like the bad guys or whatever, but they are.
That's what they say, but I don't know
Yeah, they
if
say
I
they're the
believe
bad.
that,
I don't.
right?
Yeah, I don't know. Um, like what we were talking about earlier. Like time is a great teacher. It's like Kronos is a great teacher. You know, uh, the Prometheus is a great teacher. Atlas is a great teacher.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. Are there I don't know if we've ever discussed if there's like a figure in the Zoroastrian mythos that you feel bonded to, connected to.
Not Not any. I've kind of tried to stay away from doing that in Zoroastrianism because
Oh,
I
really?
feel like yeah, it's one of the things I think that happens like when you start to deify the emanations of God rather than focus on God himself. So it would be like Serpentamenu in in Zoroastrianism. that like I'm most looking at, not like
Like the
the
way I'm
constrained
hearing
one.
it is, well,
Increming.
this is what I'm thinking, right? Like for me, if I have like an affinity for a mythological figure, it's not necessarily that I choose them, but it's more like they choose me. Do
Uh,
you think that that's something you just haven't allowed yourself to experience with Zoroastrianism?
so as far
Have
as
you
with
categorized it
Zoroastrianism,
differently?
no, no, no. So Safeta Mainu, how do you say that? Do you know how to say that? Spenta Mainu. I don't know how to say it either. Um, so that is the forward mentality. Yeah, it's like a forward moving thing, and Angraminu is like a constrained mentality. So the progressive mentality would be that figure in Zoroastrianism that I connect to, and then you have like the emanations of that in your Spenta meshes.
Zoroaster, he burst into flames, correct?
I think I think that's the story. Yeah,
Yeah, it's interesting.
flames
Flames, yeah,
like Prometheus or yeah, Prometheus, the fire from Prometheus.
yeah.
You also have that's one of the Spenta meshes is actually the cosmic fire.
Mm,
I forget what it translates to in the Vestin, but that's what it translates to in English. It's like a cosmic fire.
yeah. It'd be cool, if like we had like an Uncharted adventure. Like those games, like Tomb Raider.
Yeah,
I feel like that'd be
yeah,
cool. Like,
that
oh,
would be very.
yeah, like a group of people. It's like, oh yeah, like Rodric, he knows that stuff. It's like, oh, I know that stuff. That other dude
We have
knows that
yeah, like
stuff.
a different yeah.
Yeah, I'm really like drawn to that Shangri-La story. Like the lost city of the Buddhists. It's like, oh,
Yeah,
that's
yeah. I'm for me it would be Shambhala, like or
Shambhala. Yeah,
Agartha.
that is
Yeah,
right.
like
Yeah.
those types of.
Oh, maybe you know the answer to this. I asked Hare Krishna once, but he never got back to me. Is the Kalki born in Shambhala? Do you know?
Oh, dude, I'm not too familiar with that.
Yeah, I have to talk to another Hare Krishna about it. I'm just so curious. Is the Kalki
That'd
born
be
in
very
Shambhala?
interesting if I did know that, and I was
Yeah.
like, I should learn that. That's probably something I do need to know. You saying that is probably like, oh, hey, Roger, learn
Yeah.
this.
Have you I know we've discussed Vedic things, but I can't remember like what is how potent of an interest do you have in that or not really?
So it's I find myself like attracted to it, but then like I never really delved that deep into it. The one that I think what I don't think there's like the closest that I get to the Vedic is probably like the Greek mythological stories, and it's like that's super far, It's like
Yeah. Interesting.
yeah,
Interesting.
it's I guess you could call the Norse like connected to the Vedic, but like the Norse went in a very different direction.
How
Um,
would you connect those two? Those are
well, it's like the idea of the Indo-European and
Oh, yeah. Okay.
how those get like how they transmit through the lands.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when I like look back at like my interest in the Vedic, it's like I don't know. Well, I feel like there's a lot of religions out there that if you really want to understand them, you have to understand them artistically because that's the only way that they make any sense, so to speak. But then
Yeah,
there's like other faiths, like say the Muslim religion, where yes, there is definitely art in there. There is definitely symbol in there, but it's not held to the most sacred level as it
no,
is in
it's
those
not.
other
Yeah,
traditions. like my pastor friend, I asked him about the cross, right? Like, why is the cross the symbol of Christianity? I just didn't understand. Because there's like this idea, right, where if JFK came back to life and people were venerating him, would he want them to be wearing sniper rifles around their necks, you know? And
Yeah.
so my pastor friend, he laughed and he said to me, like, you're gonna love this, and I know you're gonna love this because of who you are. And he wasn't wrong, right? Because I saw what he was saying. He explained to me this verse from Genesis 50:20. It's from the story of Joseph, where what you intended for evil, we intended for good. And so what he was saying about the cross was that the Romans intended the worst for Christ, for the Christians, but that flipped on them, that turned, and that it became a symbol of hope for all these people. What's interesting is
Mm,
when he shared this with me, like I understood it because it's artistic, it's symbolic. But like
yeah.
with the tradition, like the Muslim tradition, if you explain that, it wouldn't translate the same way. It just wouldn't make
No.
sense. It would just clearly
Yeah.
wouldn't make sense. And that's the interesting factor I find about the Muslim religion as opposed to other traditions. All the other traditions are looking at their faiths with an artistic lens. But the Muslim tradition's like we have a place for art, but it's not the
Mm,
most sacred level of
no.
reverence.
Yeah.
What do you make of
I
that?
think that I think that that's like I think that that's good. Like I think that that is a healthier direction to take things. To like
Why do you think
have
that?
I don't think art compares to like what God is. You know, like I can't capture what God like I can't capture God in the way that I talk to like I guess like abstracting out everything, you know, you could be like, okay, this is like a connection to God in some way, but it's like I'm still not capturing what God is in anything that I do as a human, you know, like that is beyond humanity. Um, yeah, that's like how I feel about that in particular. I don't think that art should be held at the same. Yeah,
It's so fascinating. It's so
I do
fascinating
think that it's
because
interesting to intend for good what is meant for evil. I think that that's like I like that's a very like I feel like it's almost Paracelsius, you know, like it's the dose that makes the poison, you know,
mm,
it talks about how like even like like jujitsu, like this is like I think that this is like a really cool idea. Like it's like jujitsu and that like you're redirecting people's force, you know.
yes, yes, I like that connection you made there. It's so fascinating to me. And I also like what you were saying earlier because I agree with you. I don't think art should be the level or the standard for these sorts of things because
Hmm.
I'm realizing more and more for myself, like art is something that betrays you. It betrays you like crazy. And I had like a deeper discussion on it with my pastor friend. But like I was giving the example of musicians and how so many of them, like it eats them in the end.
Yeah,
It eats them in the end. It's like that thing that they thought was so sacred, that they thought was so revelational. It was the thing that did them in the end.
yeah, that happens a lot with musicians. I
Yeah.
think that there is like sort of a danger to music. Like I've really changed the type of music that I listen to recently.
Yeah.
Um, like I found myself going to much like I was listening to like what would, like it was like very it's like very crazy music. I don't even know like what genre to like put this stuff in. it was like I'd gotten into like drum and bass and like jungle and stuff like that, but then it like went really hard into like this very glitchy sounding like hard stuff, and it's like now I'm listening to like I was like I don't want to listen to this stuff anymore. So I've been like, what's like the thing that I actually want to listen to? And it's been like this one group called Yes No, and they make these very like melodic pieces that sound very organic. Um, and it's like stuff like that is what I want to listen to. I don't want to listen to like music carries a lot of energy.
Too much energy. Too much.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that you and I share a similar stance to music because it's something that the more and more I contemplate it, like the less and less convinced I am that it's a great thing. I mean, it's like that thing I said about art. Like, yes, there it has its beauty, it has its splendor, but it betrays you in the end, type thing.
yeah, very Dionysian.
Very Dionysian. That's the way to
Yeah.
put it. Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right, man. I think I'm getting a little
Me
tired.
too. Me too. Yeah. But hey, always good talking to you, Roderick. And
This was
I
awesome,
always
dude.
always
This is
appreciate
awesome.
your takes.
Thank you, dude. I appreciate it. I'm like I love talking to you and like listening to the things that you like pick up on when you are talking to me or like with other people. It's
Same,
like
same.
incredible. And then like the perspective you have on it's really awesome.
Yeah, no, likewise. And dude, like inshallah, if I like actually make like a studio for this, it'd be cool to like have you like come in, like actually talk face to face. I feel like that'd be like
Yeah,
a more
dude.
like deeper one, you know?
Yeah, I feel like we yeah, we have like some pretty crazy conversations where we're like hanging
Yeah,
out. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I suppose until next time, eh?
Hey man, see ya. You have a good one.